Hi, I'm Sylvia. I am very honored to introduce my guest, Thomas Park. He is brilliant. He's a Wall Street and technology executive with over 20 years of senior level experience in workouts, restructuring, M&A, private equity, venture capital initiatives, and more. He's currently working on global private equity deals in the US, Europe, and Asia. Thomas, I'm so thrilled to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
And Sylvia, thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to finally get a chance to talk to you as well after all the communications, written communications we've done.
Yeah, I'm so thankful to LinkedIn for connecting us. And I mean, I've watched your incredibly inspiring journey through your LinkedIn posts and through our messages. That's the power of LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time I saw you post, it was one of my colleagues had liked something that you wrote, and I'm like, who's this person? And then when I started reading the stuff that you guys were involved, especially human trafficking, I'm like, wow, let me follow her. And I was fascinated by the stories, especially your husband Matt. Yeah, I've been reading very actively your posts and when I get the chance. So it's a pleasure. Seriously, so very much a pleasure for me to talk to you right now.
Likewise, and I've been following your posts, and that's why I wanted to delve into it. And so
Okay.
let's start with your work side. I mean, you're doing these billion-dollar deals. What are you working on lately that you can share with us?
Right now, renewable energies. It's a big thanks, and the COP 28 happened about a month and a half ago in UAE in Dubai, and so we actually serve myself and my business partner. We now have a legal entity that I moved my assets over into called Zap Capital Holdings, and we're advisors to a family office in Dubai, a royal family member that's cousins, first cousins to the president of UAE. And so, because of COP 28, there's a big emphasis on everyone, looking at renewable projects globally that they can put their capital employed to and just make it a better place in terms of from a clean technology, from a climate technology approach.
Okay,
So
great.
that's probably the most exciting thing. Plus, there we could talk more, but we're also doing a lot of infrastructure. I just had a conversation this week with a gentleman about building a city in the Philippines, of all things, and I'm saying, wow, this is pretty cool. So when I've been blessed to be able to hear, to be introduced to a lot of interesting projects that we can talk about.
Yes, excellent. And you want to do more in Asia as well, right, Thomas?
I do. It's funny because I was born in Korea, came to the U.S. when I was 75. 1975, I was 4.5 years old, and I didn't go back to Korea until 1990, and I haven't been back since 1990. Um, and I want to travel more to that part of the world. I travel a lot through Europe. I've traveled almost every country in Europe, pretty much all over North America. Now this year, I'm going to be traveling to the Middle East. And my son's been telling me, hey, you got to take me to Korea. You got to take me to Korea. I said, yeah, I know. I have to take you to Korea. So actually, he's at the age, like, he's a young adult, says, hey, let me see this place. Let me see my motherland, a cultural motherland. I said, yeah, you need to see it. You need to see it. So it's going to be business and pleasure. So I'm looking forward to our first trip as father and my son and daughter back to Korea.
Oh, that will be quite a watershed time. And
Yeah.
about we'll talk about Poland and your passion for Poland later. But
Okay.
to ask you, because your posts about your hospitalization and also your posts about identity, but I'll ask you afterwards about that, finding who you are. Can you share with us what happened and that led
Sure.
to your rebirth? And you are like just so incredibly motivational in your post when you've written about how you face death at one point. So can you share with us a little bit more about that?
Sure. I have been informed that by my immunologist a while back ago as probably in the mid 2000s, they said I was a celiac, which was a highly unusual because I'm full-blooded Korean. So they're like, we've never seen this before. Now they've seen Asian celiacs, for example, in northern India. Oh, and they've seen celiacs in Philippines because there's a lot of mix between Filipinos and Americans there. But for a full-blooded Korean, I know I'm at least six generations, as I would say, pure Korean, but somehow I became a celiac. And when you end up getting one autoimmune disease, others follow as well. And over time, I noticed I was picking up, like, for example, psoriasis. I was picking up a couple of other things. And one day, a fifth autoimmune disease showed up and literally stopped my heart, lungs, kidney, liver. Everything went, and was immediately rushed into the hospital. They had no idea what it was, and my body was in a coma for about 21 days. And during that time, they had informed my son, "Be prepared because your father's going to go in a minute." They couldn't figure out exactly what it was. They threw a lot of experimental drugs at me to figure things out, and the head nurse, the emergency room. I remember Nancy. She had been a nurse for 37 years. She said I was the sickest patient that did not die in her 37 years of nursing. So even the head of immunology at Rutgers, which is a teaching school, said we had no idea what you had. We threw everything, and you know what? Funny enough, your body kind of responded to some chemotherapy of all things that actually subdued some of the flare-ups in your body. I said, really? So at the end of the day, um, I guess that it was a gift, the whole experience, because um, as one of the other doctors had said to me, we've heard about your condition. It's a footnote, but we've never seen one. And so they took my entire medical files and the lab results and everything, and I made it public. I signed off and I said, look, put it out whatever you need because what I had was like 0.03% of the population has it. I said, if I can help someone else, let's just throw it out there. And I was supposed to have chemotherapy every 6 months for the rest of my life, but they said that I've been working out every day. They said your body's healing on its own. And
Oh,
I guess for me as a man of faith, I basically, it's more than just the medicine. To me, it's a divine intervention. Is how I see it. And I've actually gotten physically much stronger. I'm lifting more weights than I ever did when I was even in high school. To give you an
that's
idea.
fantastic. Yes.
Thank you, thank you. It's amazing. It was the best thing because it also changed not just physically. I think my body chemistry, but it also changed my emotional state, my spirituality and faith, and the psychology of who I am. I used to, as my, like yourself, we talked about this about being an immigrant in a foreign country. You always grow up with a little bit of self doubt, and the funny thing was afterwards that went away pretty much. All those, identity questions and insecurities, they just kind of just disappeared. Um, a lot of it was, I think, because I realized what my purpose in life was to be. And it's kind of nice that at the age of 51, I finally figured out what I was, why I believe God put me on earth for. And I've been focused on not only business, but there's a lot of social stuff that I do. And I'm grateful for that whole experience. It's probably the best way to describe it.
Can you describe more of the purpose, your purpose in life, and how would you encourage others to find their purpose like you have?
I tell you, it was in the coma.
Wow.
I will share with you three things that happened in while I was in the coma. There were many visions that I had, extremely unreal visions. I mean, if we have time, I'll go into it. You let me know if we're running over
Go
time.
for it. Go for it.
Uh, because when I was wheeled in, I just remember literally on April 21, just in the ambulance and just April 23rd, blacking out, and the ambulance was the last image I had. And then I had a series of these, I would say, divine visions. And when I explained it to my priest afterwards, he said, "Yeah, these aren't normal." um, Stuff like the first thing I actually saw what death is. Okay,
Wow.
yeah, I had and for me, death was a very peaceful garden, and I had a choice of whether taking a step into the garden or not. And for me, I remember I was feeling so much pain physically. I mean, all the stuff my body was going through physically, but while I was in a coma, emotionally and mentally, I felt even more pain. And I remember when that image of the garden appeared, I was about to step into it, and I realized, wait a minute, this is death. And I remember I said, what do I do? I mean, I don't want any more pain. And so I did the only thing I could do, which is I said, God, thy will is mine, and then took a step forward. And they said at that point, my body had been shaking for almost a week, like just constantly moving and shaking. And as soon as that moment happened, there was a point where your body just went still. They did a code blue, they rushed in, they thought maybe I had stopped. But no, my heartbeat had dropped really low to about 36 beats per minute. And at 35, your body can't, there's not enough pressure that your body starts shutting down at 35 beats and lower. And so they were concerned that any minute that I was going to die. But while that was going on in the vision, I I never thought I could ever submit my will like that, and to be finally able to say, "Thy will is mine," and be comfortable with that. I've been a man of logic all my life and reasoning, and so faith is not that. That's something that faith begins where logic and reasoning stops. And I never thought I'd ever reached that point, and I did. And the other image that I had in the coma was long. It was, how do I describe this? I'll get to the point, okay? But what led up to it was a series of other images. But there was a point where literally I was flying through the universe, okay? This image of entity with no body, no form, just awareness, flying through the universe in a galaxy. And I saw the image of Saturn, and I said to myself, can I touch this image? And the image of Saturn kind of warped. And what I took from that experience was you have the ability to change your planet. You don't even know it. And what I mean by that is you have the connections, you have the experience, you have the knowledge, you have the understanding that you can impact people wherever you are on earth. You just have to believe you can. I'll give you an example of that. On the second day when Russia invaded Ukraine, I didn't know why, but in 2022, I literally went on LinkedIn, sent about 20 invites to all these people in Kiev that were in finance, and with a note saying, let's connect. As soon as I had about 20 that connected with me, I immediately wrote text to them, are you okay? Are you okay? Okay. And they were 18 said they were reasonably okay, and two said they're scared, they didn't know what to do. I was able to. One of them had was a gentleman that had a couple of kids and his mother and his wife there, and so I was able to pick up the phone, call some people in Poland, and basically said, "Okay, you got a room or something like that," and we were able to get an apartment, and we asked the guy to drive to the border, and there'll be a place for you at this address, and everything was ready for him. And I didn't know why, but I felt I could do something like that, and so we were able to get him a place. And there was another woman who said, I'm trying to get to Germany. I don't know how. And so I was able to get someone else in Germany to connect with her. She didn't need the service because her daughter got there, but there was a concern whether her daughter was able to find a place or not. But that happened on the second day. And I just said, I can do this. And it's like that thinking that I'm not limited. And I'm not saying that I can fix everything, but it just felt like there's not a problem that I can't influence in some way. And that was the experience I got from the coma. It was just a deep understanding that the way I was brought up, my life experiences, that even though I am Korean, as my priest said, you have a face of a Korean, the mind of an American, the heart of a Pole, the hands of the world. He said, you have it within you to kind of blend in everywhere. And
Yes.
when you grow up like I did in a small southern town in the South as an Asian in the 70s where we were the only Asians, okay? You feel really insecure about that experience, but
Yeah, me too.
it taught me how to, it taught me to be comfortable about being uncomfortable. And
Yes.
so that's why today I can be in any situation and I can kind of roll with it. It's probably the best way to describe it. And so that's why, my ventures in Poland. I know that I'll see I'm pretty sure I feel like I'm going to do something in Ukraine at some point,
Mm.
and also in Asia somewhere as well. That that 21 days in that coma open made it very expansive in the way I thought about myself and about what I could do, and the belief that there isn't anything that I can't really not do
Yes.
with with the strength of God behind me. And
Mm.
so that's what I've kind of done, from where I was, working on Wall Street, kind of managing director kind of mentality to where now I'm actually kind of pushing some MDs around at some of the banks. And I'm like, how things have changed so much where the focus is here's your purpose, change the world as much as you can. And business, I think, will be just a stepping stone. I'm also involved in some, for example, I've been talking to the Seattle School of Theology about a board member position there, helping the school there. And there are other things I want to do with the Catholic Church as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that it's
Yeah.
not just business. I feel like this is just one step in my journey.
I mean, it's riveting what you've just shared. I mean, there's just so much. You have basically cast off limitations. So you have no limitations in your mindset, which means you're unstoppable, Thomas.
I I I I have to be careful because I don't want to fall into the Nietzsche Superman and
Yes.
theory or
Yeah.
Dostoevsky Superman because
Yeah. And you
I
won't.
know I know that what drives me to be able to think this is because I feel like I'm following a divine purpose, which
Yeah.
is to help as many people as I can,
Yeah.
and in the way that I can, and that's the best way to describe it.
Yes.
And so, in 2024, from a business perspective, I hope to launch a fairly large, sizable fund of funds in Central Eastern Europe. There isn't one that's privately run yet, and I'm hoping that we can get that done in 2024. That's one of my big goals for this year.
And you mentioned before the garden and then also flying through space without any foreign
So yeah,
contact. I've heard that before.
I
Yeah, it's like a near-death experience. I produced a documentary on NDEs and it's called
okay.
Thomas.
So I'll give you the whole thing real quickly, and I hope I don't take too much of your time here.
Oh, go for it. This is fascinating.
When when I got to the hospital, um, the first image I had was me lying on the floor, dark, but not too dark, but that I could see the silhouette of my form. And then all of a sudden, there were bolts of electricity that came in and out of every piece of my body. And it was causing extreme pain I've never felt. Pain were pain 100 times magnified than anything I ever experienced before the coma. And I remember thinking that this must be hell. I can't explain why I have so much pain around me. And it was intense pain over and over, bolts of lightning going in and out. And you come to realize that you're utterly helpless. There's nothing you can do. And that understanding that there's nothing that you could possibly do yourself that is beyond your control is one of the scariest feelings in the world. And then having the physical pain and the emotional pain and feeling your soul's being ripped apart. It was, and the nurses had said that my body was twitching constantly during the time as as I was experiencing high levels of pain. And then it was at towards almost a week of that. It felt like it fit eternity to me. But there was a point where it I was experiencing this pain. I got up from the ground and I started walking. And when I walked, it got a little darker and then it got a little lighter. And then I saw this garden. And that's when I was walking towards the garden. And I said, wow, this looks beautiful. This looks peaceful. It's got trestle there. And you're sitting in there. Wow, this is gorgeous. Like a picture of something that Monet would have painted. And as I was walking there, and that's when there was a clear line between darkness and this garden of light, this beauty. And that's when I went, wait a minute, this is death. If I take a step forward, that means I accept death. But I can't stay in the shadows. I can't stay in the darkness, which is just causing so much pain as well. And before all this happened, 2 months before that, I actually had a philosophical discussion with my priest because I realized something was wrong with my body, or trying to figure out what it was. And it was really, they couldn't figure it out. They just couldn't. And I remember having philosophical discussions, theological discussions with my priest, because I said, the more I studied the Bible, I said, I see the love of Christ, but I see the anger of God too much. And every time I read it. And my priest said, keep reading the book of Job, because you said you read it 100 times if you have to. You're going to have different opinions on it as you read it. And I remember thinking that I just felt like my body was shutting down. I said, God, when it's time for me to make a decision to die, I will do that, not you. I said, I got this, not you. Because I was a bit angry at the time. And that's why that happened around February timeframe. And then, going through this coma, at that moment, I finally said, God, here I am. Thy will is mine. And I took the step. And then after that, the entire image, I just went complete blank. That's when they said my body just lay still. And it was like that for a couple of days, no movement, no nothing, just a very low heartbeat. And then another image showed up where it was total blackness, utter blackness, no form, no nothing, no warmth, no light, absence of any energy. But I had awareness with no physical form. So I literally realized I am a presence without any physical form, and no one can hear me or see me. And when I looked around, darkness forever, like so dark you can't see in front of you.
Yeah.
It was that was at the moment where I started really. They said tears were coming down my eyes at that point, because that to me felt like true hell, the absence of anything of love, warmth, or anything like that. And then it was like a week of that when my mind started shifting. Like, wait a minute. Maybe this isn't hell. Maybe this is a different form of dimension. Maybe this is. Then I started thinking, well, maybe beyond form. Then I started thinking, well, what if this was the time before Big Bang? As soon as I said that, a little pinhole light showed up.
Oh.
And I started staring at the light, and then the pin grew and grew and grew, and gas started coming out. Basically, I saw the whole Big Bang happen in front of me.
Oh.
And I saw the universe being created in front of me, the stars, the meteors, the planets, the different galaxies. And I was this entity just out there floating in the universe.
Wow.
And just seeing the beauty in front of me. And then I remember at that moment, I said, I wonder what my planet looks like. As soon as I said that, I was speeding through the universe back to the Milky Way. And as we were getting to the gap through the galaxy, that's when I saw Saturn. I said, I wonder if we could touch Saturn. The image warped. Like you drop a rock into a still water and it ripples. That's the image rippled. And then I was wondering what Earth looked like. As we got to Earth was, I saw evolution happening in front of me. I saw the primordial soup. I saw the cells being developed, the animals and stuff like that. The whole thing happening in front of me, like a speed, rapid film. Saw the history of man, saw the history of the world. And then when it got to the present moment, And I was hovering over my neighborhood. I said, I wonder if I could touch my neighborhood. As soon as I said that, the image of the neighborhood warped as well. And as soon as that happened, a voice, a very peaceful, melodious voice said, Thomas, it's time to wake up.
Oh.
Not get time to wake up. Now, at that moment, that's when I opened my eyes. I had all these tubes in my mouth. And you're going to laugh at this, Sylvia. My legal name is Jung Ho Park. Okay. So they didn't know too much about me. So they thought he's Korean. Okay. We'll give him a Korean nurse. Okay. My Korean is my third most spoken language. Okay. Maybe my fourth. All right. So they put a nurse who spoke very little English, all Korean, and she was taking care of me throughout the entire duration when I was
Oh,
in.
wow.
And I just went, oh my God, I'm so thirsty. I said, what would you say? Oh, I was like pulling every single Korean word I could think, like, oh, Mani Bekupayo, literally trying to explain to her. And I was like, okay, what are those words again? And just trying, coming out of this coma now, I'm trying to call every Korean word I know. And she had a reason to be there. So I knew that when I woke up, when I heard that male voice, there was no other one except this Korean woman. Okay. So I knew that voice to me was the voice of God telling me, okay, now you're ready to do what I need you for you to do. And the beauty of it was this woman, I asked her to sing for me all the Korean lullabies, and that helped
Oh,
so much. And every night before I fell asleep, she would sing me a Korean lullaby, and I couldn't ask for anything more. So, I mean, San Toki Toki Ato,
yeah.
every right. And I was just like,
These
I think
classics.
all the classics, yes, and classics I haven't heard in at the time in like
Yeah,
50 years or something like that.
I understand. Yeah.
So, yeah. Um, then they moved me to the regular ward, and my Polish friends know this. Okay, my closest Polish friends. I have another interesting story about that. So here I am, completely. They have that robe, right? This is a teaching hospital. Every day, every 4 hours, they had a teaching group coming in of medical students, right? I was completely naked. They were reserving my entire body, doing the vitals and all that, naked all the time. Good Lord, I may have like over half the entire class of the medical school coming in and seeing me because they haven't seen this rare disease. And
Oh.
I was like, wow, should be paid. I made a joke to the head, the professors running the school came by. I said, I should charge you because, I feel like I'm a stripper, not getting paid for this, okay? Because here I am, all I keep taking my robe off so you can measure everything around me. But the cool thing that happened was they kept putting Benadryl for me because I had a lot of pain still, and Benadryl kind of helped as they were injecting other medicine into me. And there was this one moment where literally I had my eyes closed, and the head nurse was Ukrainian. That 1 week was a Ukrainian, and we talked a little bit, got to know her a little bit, but they just injected me with Benadryl, and I started feeling the effects. I had my eyes closed, but I could still hear. And Natalia was her name. And she said, oh, we have a new nurse's aide coming in to help you. Okay. Here I am like this. Okay. Lying down, I have my eyes closed. Oh, you have a new nurse. Okay. And I hear someone walking in. Okay. I said, okay. And Thomas, just want to let you know, her name's Ava. I said, oh, Ava. Okay. How do you spell that? EWA. I said, oh, she's Polish. Ona jest Polakiem. Dzień dobry. Nazywam się Thomas Freud. And I started speaking Polish. And Ava screamed, what the hell? And I look back at my recovery. I look back at my life since that fateful day in April. And I noticed that God has put certain individuals in my life, what I call the angels that I needed. I can't tell you, if it wasn't for that Polish nurse, Ava, oh my God, she'd show me some tough love, baby. Oh my God. I was I was paralyzed 4 months. They didn't know I had so much nerve damage. They didn't know whether my nerve damage
Oh.
was permanent or not. Okay. So I couldn't walk. And
Mm.
so there was a time the physical therapist came in and I got to know Ava really well. Ava would, every time she wanted to criticize me for something, she just yelled at me in Polish. I was like, you want to get to me in Polish? And literally she flat out was like, they don't hold back. Okay. And I remember that one time, oh, she got me really good on this one. I was really scared to try to get up. Okay. I'd been like laying down for almost 3 months and I had to finally start moving. And they said, you may not feel your feet, but you need to learn to move. Even without feeling, you don't know whether you have permanent paralysis, you have to do this. And the physical therapist was complaining to the nurses, like, we need to move them more. So Ava came up to me. She's prepping me, from my bed. She's getting it all tidy. She whispers in my ear, "Jeszcze mężczyzna." Is in Polish. She said, "Are you a man?"
Oh gosh.
Oh my
It
goodness! I said,
motivated you, didn't
"He
it?
was."
She knew how to press your buttons.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. She really did. Um, that woman literally got me off my back.
Oh, wow.
The best way to describe it. And the funny thing, I love telling this. So they said I was strong enough now. I had just started walking. They said, now we got to move you to a physical therapy, full-time physical therapy facility, which is not at the hospital. So it's, closer to your home. So, and they said, yeah, you're moving on this date. Natalie told me, well, Ava's not going to be here. She's taking a vacation. So today's the last day you're going to see her before you leave. So I asked Natalia, can I have a couple pieces of paper and a pen and an envelope? So I spent 3.5 hours writing a letter in Polish, just describing what Ava was to me. She literally, she was the angel that God had given me at the moment. So I spent literally like drafts and drafts. And I finally got it right. Okay. So I gave it to her. I gave it I gave it to another nurse who then gave it to her right before she left. And then all of a sudden she comes in and she said, "Did you write this?" I was like, "Yeah, I wrote this." She goes, and then she goes, and she said in Polish, "This is such a beautiful thing. Did you really write this?" I said, "Yeah, no, probably. I really did." Da, da, da. And then she then took a red pen and corrected it. She corrected the note, gave it back to me, said, "This is how you're supposed to say it. This word you should use AM, not EM, because da da da,
Too
or
funny.
EM the other way." I looked at her like, "You can't stop being Polish, can you?" And she goes, "No, I am a Polka, which means I'm a Polish woman." I'm like, "Okay, all right, I got it." Yeah, I mean,
It's similar to
I looked back.
Korean, isn't it? Like how Koreans will correct, and it's very right.
Well,
Korean
Korean
moms.
mothers, but Korean, the Bobches, the ruthless, they'll tell you, right? No, all Polish women will correct you no matter what you do. If you follow my Polish, you'll see some of them correcting me, okay? It's a given. I accept it. I accept it. They don't. One time I said to them, this face does not speak Polish, right? That we don't care. If you can speak it, we'll correct you.
Love it.
And literally, there's a saying: Polish women believe that their way of showing care is to criticize you. I'm
Uh,
like, okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
they stop caring. Okay, so it's that experience overall, Sylvia taught me that first of all, several things that I have my ability to stand pain is very high. I didn't realize that.
Mhm.
That I have a incredible will not to give up. I'll keep pursuing things. And also, that taught me to truly trust others. Like I couldn't trust people before, and I really had a hard time. And then when you start trusting others, what you do is you trust yourself in the process. And I started really trusting me and my ability to relate with people, my ability to connect with people, my ability to understand. I never comfortable doing my personal skills like that were, I would say, very weak. And that whole thing changed my perspective. And so I am very open about my weaknesses and my skills. And what I've noticed when I do that, people relate to my stories in terms of what I've learned and what I hope to, my self improvement process. I'm not afraid to admit where I need to improve upon. And when you do that, what happens is that you become very authentic. And that's the thing that I lacked in my life before this, is to be able to live very authentically, to voice authentically, to feel authentically, and without having to worry about what other people think. I don't, I'm still human in the sense that I still will listen to certain people, but at the end of the day, it's really my choice. And I finally accepted that. That was the thing I learned from that whole experience is those key things: learning to trust yourself, learning to trust others, understanding that, sometimes when things don't go your way, there's a lesson to be learned. There's a gift in there. You have to figure out what that is. So every time if I ever feel frustrated, I always ask myself, what am I supposed to learn from this?
Mm.
And every time you face a problem, if you really think about it, like, your day's going wrong or something, you ask yourself, what am I supposed to learn from this? If you keep asking yourself that question, you'll realize, okay, my lesson was supposed to be this from this bad experience.
Mhm.
And then by that, you realize that that's the gift in self. That's the thing that changed about the way I look at things.
Yeah, no,
Probably the best way.
that's profound. That's profound. And after the emotions settle and time passes, that's when people start to reflect and realize, oh, there's a kernel of something that I can take away from this horrible toxic experience or whatever it is. Wow, that's very powerful, Thomas. Do you have another milestone you want to share regarding like the most powerful lesson learned about your identity? Coming to terms with your Korean
Yeah,
culture and then taking
that
on
was,
Polish culture, right?
I would tell you. So, uh, my my family, the part of Korea we're from the mountains. We're from Jeju-do. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Jeju, the Jeollado province. Okay, the mountains. So they have a very unique accent, right? Very like a hillbilly accent. And so my father, the several times he tried to start a business in Seoul, constantly got taken advantage of. Okay. And so he realized for him to go after his dreams, he said, I can't do it in Korea. And my grandfather died when my father was 14, and he came from a family of 11. Okay. But somehow he ended up taking care of the family because his older brothers were just not up to it to take care of him. So he ended up being the middle son who had to do all the work. And so I remember he met my mother when my father was 31. When he met my mother, they got married like 3 months after they met each other for the first time. Um, but before he met my mother, he was applying for access to come to America almost like 9 years before that. So and then and he was a driven man. And so what I learned from that experience was that he did not like being with other Koreans. He just said, you know what, I have to make it on my own. So like unlike most Koreans who come to the US and they, we tend to relocate or locate in major areas where other Koreans are, he said, no, hell no, I'm gonna raise my kids differently. So we ended up going to Portsmouth, Virginia. And best way to describe it was, yeah, it was pretty much me in a neighborhood. We were the only Asians. Um, I learned we were blessed. That's another example of God stepping in because a family adopted us, like literally brought us into their home for several months and helped us kind of. And I called them my American grandparents. They so I grew up with the nickname Buddy. So there you look at you and I connected on Facebook. So about a third of my friends on Facebook call me Buddy. That's the name I grew up with.
Love it.
And I was called that because I was a kid that was always wanting to play with everybody. My younger brother was called Butch because he was always antagonizing everyone. Okay. He was he just loved getting into trouble. So the name Butch was for him. But so I grew up very much, did not realize I was an Asian. You know, it's funny because I didn't realize how what a Korean meant until I got to college. And I remember that second day walking on campus, walking on the grounds at University of Virginia, and I was with one of my suite mates, and I stopped and I said, "What's going on?" I said, "Those are Korean girls. I've never seen a Korean girl before. I'd never actually seen a Korean girl alive." I was like, "Is that a Korean girl? Oh crap, that's a Korean girl." Because I've seen Chinese girls at the time. There were several Chinese, Taiwanese girls in my private school. I was like, "Wow, that's a Korean girl. Wow." That was my first reaction. I hadn't seen one. I was like, "Oh, okay." That was that's the best way. That's how isolated I was in many ways. So then in 1990, when I went back to Korea, and when you go back, the local Koreans, they call it Jamie Gilpos, which it's not
Yeah.
a nice way of saying it, but in fact, I didn't. My father also, my mother was a teacher in Korea for 17 years. At still elementary school, my father said, my kids will not learn Korean. And so we were forced to speak English in the house. So that's why when I do speak Korean, I have a heavy, thick American accent. That's
Yeah.
why Koreans look at me like, the hell?
Me
I mean, when
too.
I try. So because of that, I didn't know I was physically different, mentally the same, yet there was a world I didn't know. And then as I got to develop friendship with Korean American students at the university, I had a hard time relating to the stuff they did. They played ghost up. I had no idea what ghost up was. They drank a lot. I was like, I never drank really. Um, the way they always came together, ate food as a group. I always brought up like take my plate, put my food on, and eat it like that instead of communally. I've never really did that until I got to college. What else? Yeah, again, I was 6'2". Most of the Korean girls were 5'1", 5'2". I was like, geez, okay, didn't know what that is about. So here's a funny story, and will tell you how I didn't know my own ethnicity. Okay, so when you grow up like I did, among mostly white America, Southern white America, uh, I never really dated at all. I couldn't really date because my dad died when I was 15, so I had to run the family business. So, high school, you start to learn how to date. I didn't have that opportunity because I had to work very hard so I don't lose my scholarship at the private school I was going to. I had to run the business, and I also wanted to play college baseball. So there was stuff that I wanted to do with college sports as well. And so I did not ever date in high school. So when I got to college, it was interesting. At university systems, at university colleges in America, it's very segregated, surprisingly.
Mm.
You have Asians, you have Black Americans hanging out with Black Americans, international students hanging out with international students, and white Americans hanging out with white Americans. You got the fraternity, sororities, and all that. And I was like, I don't fit anywhere, really. And I remember I said, I should ask a Korean girl out for a date. I got rejected 50 times. Okay. I was like, Jesus, 50 times I got rejected. And I was complaining like a little baby. And then a senior said to me, "You act like a little girl. What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "I've asked all these girls out. They all rejected me." And that's when he goes, and she looked up and she goes, "Why did you ask these girls?" "Oh, because they're cute and they're really fun. They got great personalities." And she goes, "Where did you grow up?" When I told her how I grew up, I remember her name Rita. She said, "Do me a favor." She goes, "What?" She said, "Go ask the prettiest Korean girl you think is on campus." I said, "Why?" "Just do it." And I did. Her name was Claire. I asked her, "Hey, girl, you want to hang out sometime? You want to grab some pizza?" She goes, "Sure." I was like, "What?" And so I didn't know how I was perceived. I thought I was this ugly duckling for
Oh,
the longest time. I literally thought I was an ugly duckling. I was like, okay.
yeah.
And then, but I didn't actually take her on a date. And the first girl I actually asked and was this Korean woman. I asked her for a date. She said yes. And that date lasted 29 years.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so that was yeah,
I remember you told me that story. Amazing.
yeah. So, unfortunately, we grew apart. She was very Korean. I'm very American. We had a lot of, unfortunately, situations where we couldn't really blend in. And yes, especially with things related to church. She never grew up in the church at all. And that was a huge conflict for me as I grew older. She was her parents brought her up Buddhist.
Mm.
And yeah, that was a huge one. I didn't realize how important faith was. As I grew older, it became more and more so for me.
We don't
But
know when we're young. We don't realize these things. I
I
have.
was yeah, first date I ever had was age 20. I ended up, marrying her.
Mhm.
So it was that kind of situation. So ethnicity wise, I remember with her family,
Yeah.
she had like 450 family members in the Washington area. Okay, and I just had myself, my father before he passed away, my younger brother. That's it. So I didn't really have a big family here in the U.S. So I didn't have those clusters of experiences. And every time I went, we went up there, it was like family upon family upon family, events, events, events. And
Yeah.
they're all looking at me like, you don't know, dude, you don't know this, you don't know. I'm like, no, I don't. And
Yeah.
it was tough trying to figure it out. But I did figure it out, but it was like, okay, I had to relearn everything. And
Culture
yeah,
clash. Understandably, it's very common in this part of the world as well, where a Chinese person will marry a Westerner, and the Westerner doesn't realize that the in-laws will be living together with them until after the wedding. So it's quite common, and in
it,
this part of the world, Chinese give pocket money to the parents every month, and those who are from the West are like, "What?" Like they don't understand that.
yeah, that's one thing. My mother, again, that's another story. When she never was she so because my father kind of stopped the Korean tradition, so she wasn't the Korean mother like you think she should be, like you would imagine, right? She was very American in that sense. And so, but when I got my first paycheck for my first job, she goes, "Give it
Yeah,
to me." I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on, hold on, hold on. You didn't do any Korean thing. Now you want that?" I'm like, "No, no, 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 no.
too
I'll
funny.
take care of it.
Yeah.
I got this." Yeah, but yeah, that was there were so many moments. And and the funny thing was that the Polish aspect kind of dovetailed this aspect. So it was unusual. This is some of my insecurities where I remember I was rising through the ranks in the investment banking world, okay? And there were other Korean employees. I was never comfortable around them for some reason. I just felt I had, traditional high five, but no one, I never really got to know any of my Korean colleagues on purpose. For me, I wasn't comfortable about it. And then, yeah, so what happened was I got hired as an executive at this private bank, and they said, yeah, half your team's in Poland. I was like, okay, all right, never heard of, never been there. And the funny thing was, it was right at the time that I had separated from my wife, and we were going through that divorce process when this part of Poland came into my life. And as I traveled more to Poland, as I understood the culture and the way they thought, I was like, wait a minute, they're Korean. They really are the way the friends hang out, where their families get together,
Yeah.
um, and the way they celebrated all the little things and big things
Oh,
together.
wow. That's
Uh, so it was easy for me to really blend in. I was like, oh, I
wow.
was ready for that because Sylvia, for me, being Korean was a lot of that was associated with my ex-wife. Okay, for me, and so I didn't have that anymore. So I was like, I kind of missed that Korean aspect. So I did, and the Polish aspect came in like that kind of served as a good substitute for me, and
Mm.
also because there was an issue of faith there because of the Catholic Church as well. That I was, even though here's the thing, when my father died at
Mm.
15, I so angry at God because my life was already difficult.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, my father was alcoholic, so it made childhood really difficult for me. But I remember saying to God, if you let him survive this, then I don't mind giving up my happiness for the rest of my life for him to just be around. And so when he died unexpectedly, he went in for gallbladder surgery. 2 weeks later, I mean, when they opened up stage 4 cancer, this is the mid '80s when cancer research was just not where it is today. And I remember I told God, you did this to me, I'll never step in foot inside of a church again. So I didn't. But the funny thing was, I may have stopped going to church, but I started reading the Bible more. I
Oh,
start I started taking classes. I remember taking one of the most influential classes I ever took was morality of religion, where I got introduced to some of the greatest Christian writers of all time, St. Augustine, St. Thomas More, and all. And I just couldn't stop reading. And I was like, here, seeing all these intellectuals trying to discover God through logic. And then I remember taking some of the physics classes and sitting there thinking, there's a design to all of this. And later, a bit later, the subject of the grand design, or we call system dynamics, is a branch of that where everything is interrelated with each other. And I remember taking classes like that. So I guess in many ways, I was trying to find God intellectually, not through faith. And so when Poland came around, it was like what really started me back to the church. So it was, of all things, when I was a young kid, I was invited sometimes to mass for by my friends when we were little kids. And when I went to English mass, literally, give me 5 minutes and this is me, just sleeping. I mean, it was okay. And so October 2018, I went to dinner with the koleżanka, which means a female colleague, and I just came back from the States, was there in Poland, and she said, let's grab dinner. And we were just catching up on things. And she goes, oh, Tom, I'm sorry, I got to go. I got to go someplace. I got to cut everything at 7 p.m. So where are you going? She said, I'm going to mass. I was like, can I join you? She goes, yeah, but everything's in Polish. I said, I can understand it. I could probably learn from things. It'll be kind of a new experience. And I remember when I walked in, it was St. Francis of Assisi in down in the old center of Krakow. I walked in, it was, I mean, it was literally packed. All these college age kids were in there. They don't have places, there were no pews. Everyone stood up, right? The candles were lit and the priests were in the front. It was such an amazing experience. And so I was, we were going standing up, bending down, and going up and down. And then it was about 2/3 into that, and I couldn't stop thinking about every single syllable, every single word came into my left and went out to my right. Like I understood everything. This is incredible because I didn't expect it. And then this is what happened about 2/3 into that mass. I heard a voice that says, Yeshish Vadomo, which in Polish means you're home. I'm like, I opened my eyes, looked around, everyone's still bowing in prayer. I'm like, what? Me in this group? I'm home? And
confirmation.
the best way, so when I tell people why I go to Polish Mass, is that when I hear the Mass in Polish, I hear the voice of God. It's probably the best way to describe it.
Wow,
And
powerful.
so my prayers, and I say the Lord's Prayer in Polish as well. It's Oceanas, as we say it in Polish. So I can't describe it. It's more than just about learning a culture for me now. It's about, I guess, maybe in my previous life. I may have been a Slav somewhere. Oh, and also something else. During a medical thing, they did a DNA study on me. Most Koreans were 98% Korean.
Mm.
We have a little bit of Mongolian blood in us. I was 91% Korean, 6% Mongolian,
Oh, fascinating.
and 3% Slavic.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
So I realized, okay, I guess the Silk, most people forget the Silk Road
Mhm.
actually ended in the mountains of Korea, not China.
Mhm.
So somehow, I guess I kind of joke that one of my ancestors must have fooled around with a foreigner and the DNA.
So I think what I'm going to have to do, because it's just been so riveting, I think I'll have to bring you back for part two to finish the rest of the interview. So let's wrap it up here. And there will be a part two coming in when Thomas has the time. And it's just been a very powerful sharing. And like, we from near death experience to finding your purpose from that after facing death and overcoming that. and against all odds, your body is stronger than before, and how you were able to shift your mindset to something more, without limits, right? Because I think when you conquer fear, that's what happens. And someone said the root of all fear is the fear of death. Is that fascinating or what? The root of all fear is the fear of death, and you overcame that, right? And
I
yeah,
yeah, the best way to describe it, I think everybody, their greatest fear is that when they see death, they are alone, right?
yeah.
I realized that you're not alone at the time of death. You really aren't. And knowing that, that's why I'm not fearful. If God tells me it's time to come home, it's time to come home. So I'm not worried about that. I would say the one thing I really liked, and this is how the purpose kind of meshed to what I'm doing right now. When I was in Wall Street, it was very individual. Wall Street is about, it's very fascinating. You're around some really smart people, which I love. Okay, but the transactions are very focused on teams or even individuals in many ways. When you're working with sovereign funds, okay, it's not just about returns for investors. There's the added dimension of sovereign fund is how am I going to help my country, or how am I going to help a greater country? There's a greater purpose for the money, not just about a return. And that, of all things, that's probably the best place for my what I want to do with my life, at least in terms of business. And it just seems very natural being in the sovereign fund space. So it's probably the best way to describe it. Because I'm not just looking at making someone wealthy, it's about how do I make a country wealthy, and it kind of meshes to what I'm trying to do. So
Absolutely. In
yeah,
transforming the world after your personal transformation. And so please add Thomas Park on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for joining part one of this engrossing, riveting conversation with Thomas. And Thomas, usually people who've had a profound NDE, a near-death experience, they end up writing books about it. They end up going on the speaking circuit. And I can really see you doing that. So yeah, let's see what happens. I'll be checking in with you again. Yeah, go ahead.
yes,
What were you gonna say?
I would, the best way, thank you again. Thank you for allowing me to kind of share my story here. Appreciative of this time with you, Sylvia. I hope you get a better sense of what I'm about now, and
Oh,
what drives me, and what I hope to accomplish before, time for me to go back home, as they say. But I got a lot of stuff I want to get done for that.
yeah,
And I'm
no,
fortunate. The other thing I want to mention real quick to your audience, the way God helps you is the people that come into your life. You don't realize it. They they may be like this. My current partner, he kind of slid into my DM one day in LinkedIn. Same as Jahan Khan. The young man's incredible, and we've been able to develop a deep friendship and also a good business relationship together, working with them. So yeah, it's a devout Catholic, me, and a devout Muslim, and we kind of feed each other off of that. It's probably the best way to describe it.
that's beautiful and inspiring that people who, otherwise wouldn't have anything in common are able to come together and have a beautiful friendship. Yeah, thank you, LinkedIn, for connecting me and Thomas. That's the power of this platform.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm just so thankful that we're friends, and just hearing your, like, I've read your posts. I've been following you closely for a long time, but to hear it, it's just incredible. Thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you,
my
everyone,
pleasure.
for joining me on Inspiring You with Sylvia Yu. And please add Thomas as a friend. And if you are interested in, yeah, just hearing more about him in part two, I will keep you posted on when that will happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sylvia, and stay blessed. Okay, thank you so much again. We'll talk soon. Okay.
We'll talk soon.